I'm going to take you back to January 19th, 2002. It's the last ever NFL game at Foxborough Stadium, and a young second-year quarterback named Tom Brady would lead his team to history. This is From the Vault. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate you being here. If it's your first time, I'm David Bergman. I've been a professional photographer for 30 years now, and I'm a Canon Explorer of Light. Each week, I'm pulling an interesting image out of my archive, and I'm going to tell the behind-the-scenes story as best as I remember it. If you can, do me a favor, go ahead and subscribe to this channel. You'll get notifications if you hit the little bell icon as soon as new shows come out. I'm hoping to do these every week, and hopefully there'll be a new interesting photo each time. If you like that photo, you can also get a signed fine art print of that image. Those are all available every week at davidbergmanphoto.com. All right, we're going to go back quite a ways here. January 19th, 2002. I had just moved to New York about a year earlier, and I was a contributing photographer for Sports Illustrated magazine. Now, this was the early years of digital photography. Before I moved to New York, I was a staff photographer at the Miami Herald, and I was actually the first full-time digital photographer at the Miami headquarters. Back then, for you gear people, I was shooting the DCS-1, which was a Canon Kodak hybrid camera. They made it together, and it was very early digital technology. There had been digital cameras for the consumer market, like the Apple Quick Take and things like that, but actual professional cameras for people working, working photographers, they really were just starting out. Just to give you an idea about that camera, there was no screen on the back. You couldn't review images. The battery was not removable, so you had to literally plug the camera into the wall to charge it up. I remember at football games at halftime having to run into the media trailer and plug in the cameras just so that we could have enough juice to get through the rest of the game. And we didn't always make it, believe me. But I had moved to New York City in early 2001, and I had a lot of experience now with digital at that time. And I started working with Sports Illustrated, and they were intrigued because they had been considering making the transition to digital. They were still shooting film at the time, either slide film or negative film, but that's how they were working. And there's a whole ecosystem set up around film at the magazine at the time. And I come in and they want to start making this transition. So it was the perfect storm for me because I had just moved to New York, and I, of course, wanted to shoot for SI, and they used me during the week. I was traveling all around the country, meeting up with the Sports Illustrated staff photographers, these legendary staff photographers whose names you know. If you're a sports fan or a sports photographer, you've seen their images, I promise you. And I got to go and meet with them and teach them basically the ways of digital, not only how the cameras worked and how they were different from film cameras, but also file management, transmitting images on the computer, all of those kinds of things that a lot of these photographers had never done before because they had been shooting film for the magazine for their whole career. And then for me, I got to learn from them because the way we would work is I would go with them. I would usually work at their home for a bit, and then we'd shoot a game together, or we'd go to an event or something and get to shoot. So I got to learn from them just as much as probably a lot more than they actually learned from me. So it was really great. And then that was during the week. And then on the weekends, the magazine would use me to shoot assignments. So sometimes digital, sometimes film. So that was really awesome. So about a year in, I was still doing that. But at that time, the Canon EOS 1D had come out. The original 1D, the first really good digital camera from Canon. Relatively, it's nothing near where we are today, 20 years later. I'm pretty sure SI had provided that camera for me. I didn't own that at the time. But that 1D, if you look up the specs, it's 4.15 megapixels. So basically 4 megapixels, which it's still amazing to me that the magazine published photographs at 4 megapixels. But anytime I hear people complain about, oh, this is only 20 megapixels or only 25 megapixels, it makes me laugh because we were actually able to work with that kind of file size. Again, I'd rather have 20, 30, 50, but you can certainly make it work. A good picture is a good picture regardless of megapixels. That camera also shot 8 frames a second, which was a huge step up. The film cameras at the time were shooting either 3 or 6, depending on if you had the high-speed grip or not. So now we get around, we're in the NFL playoffs. the Raiders, the Oakland Raiders, are playing at the Patriots. It's the AFC Divisional Playoff game. It's a horrible snowstorm. It's snowing like crazy. You know, there's a few inches of snow on the ground, and it's just coming down, those big, heavy flakes. Now, Tom Brady was the quarterback that year. He was the starter. He was the 199th pick in the draft, as I'm sure you know. This was his first ever playoff game. It was his second season. He had taken over in the second game of the season earlier that year for Drew Bledsoe, who was injured, and Brady led them on a pretty good run the rest of that year. They started 0-2, and then he led them to an 11-13 record the rest of the season. So needless to say, it was a little taste of what was to come, right? Now, normally when I shoot football, I would have an assistant with me, and I would have 3 or 4 bodies with lenses, and that assistant would obviously help me carry that stuff. The reason you shoot so many bodies and lenses, you want to have the lenses already on the bodies ready to go, because something like football, you don't know where it's going to happen on the field, where the action is going to happen. They could be 50 yards downfield, and the quarterback throws a bomb, and then they might land in your lap. So you need to be able to switch from that long lens to that wide angle very, very quickly. If you're trying to change lenses or something like that, you're never going to get the picture. And if you're working for Sports Illustrated, you can't say, oh, sorry, I missed the picture. So you're going to have a lot of gear with you. Now, this particular game was a playoff game. I was the young kid at the magazine. You know, there were other SI photographers there, staffers there. They had assistants. I had no assistant. So I was shooting with 2 bodies and 2 lenses. Now, I had the one long lens. It was either probably a 400 2.8, might have been the 600 f4. I don't remember which lens that was. That was on the 1D digital camera. And then my second body was my own film body. That was probably the EOS 1N or maybe the 1V. I think the 1V was the sort of top body at that time. There was an HS version, I think it was a high-speed version, with a grip on it basically that changed it from 3 frames a second to 6. So that was a luxury to have 6 frames a second. And I remember the batteries on that digital camera. I had to keep the extra batteries in my bag with those chemical hand warmers just to keep them warm, because those batteries would not last a whole game back then. So if you didn't keep them warm, they would die right away. So now one battery will easily last the whole game. So this game, if you're a football fan, you probably know what happened this game. The game will be remembered forever for the tuck rule. Brady pulled back. Looked like he fumbled the ball, but they ruled it actually an incomplete pass, and they kept the ball. It was about a minute and a half left in the game when that happened. But for me personally, what I remember from that game, it was early in the fourth quarter. Patriots were down 13-3, and Brady became Tom Brady, right? He really showed what the future would hold for him. That drive, he went 9 for 9 on passing, and then there were about 8 minutes left. I'm in the back of the end zone by myself. The other SI photographers are in different positions, and the ball's on the 6-yard line. Brady takes the snap. He does like a pump fake, and then he starts running pretty much straight at me. And those pictures, this whole sequence, I had to pick up that 7200 and just shoot away, that film camera, and shoot away. Now, remember, this is early autofocus systems. It's only 6 frames a second. I was happy just to get a frame or 2 in sharp. In focus, excuse me. Most of them are pretty sharp. Some of them, the focus is on the player in back. Some of them, it's on Brady. But I was happy just to get a couple frames. By the way, if you want to see what this play looks like in real time, I'll put a link down below to the video of the highlights from this game and where this play actually happened. It's always cool to me to compare sort of what it looks like on TV versus what it looks like from our angle on the field. I think still photographs, especially from a low angle with the action coming straight at you, are so much more powerful. You look at this image, I mean, of Brady running straight at me, and it just has a power to it and a majesty to it, a majestic quality to it that you just don't see when you watch the video. What SI did when they published the story, I actually still have the clip of the story that ran in the magazine. They ran 2 images. One of them is that picture of the end zone militia, as they call themselves, who they fire off their muskets every time the Patriots score, and they really didn't have a whole lot to do that game because there was not a lot of scoring, so the snow was just building up on them. But SI loves action pictures, so they actually ran the shot of Brady when he was sort of diving in over that Raiders player. So that's the picture that they ran with. But let me tell you, as the new guy and as the young kid at the magazine, I was just so happy to have anything in the magazine, less yet the 2 images from that whole story. So it was kind of a great thing for me in my early career at the magazine. Now, the Patriots would go on to win that game in overtime. Of course, Tom Brady now has every major NFL quarterback record. As I'm recording this, he is about to go into the Super Bowl game with a new team with the Bucs this weekend. And he has 33 playoff wins. That's a record. This will be his 10th Super Bowl appearance. He's got 6 Super Bowl wins, 4 of them as MVP. I mean, I'm not particularly a Brady fan, but you can't deny that he will go down as probably the best ever. For me personally, I photographed him a lot over the years, but I just love this shot of him running in for the team's only touchdown during that game in the snow in his first playoff game. It was the last game ever at Foxborough. They moved on the next season to Gillette Stadium. So this was a really kind of a historic game, both for the franchise, and it was great for me as well. So this picture, again, one of my favorites. If you guys want a print of this image, this Tom Brady photograph, I'm making these 11 by 14 fine art prints. I'm hand signing them, printing them on really nice gallery quality matte paper. So you can check those out at davidbergmanphoto.com. You can also see the other images from the other shows from the vault that I've been doing. I hope you'll pick up a couple of those because that helps me support this show. So thanks very much for joining me. I really appreciate it. I hope you subscribed. Thumbs up, give me a like down below, leave a comment if you want. I'll be back next time with some new images. I hope you'll join me right here from the vault.